the fascinating dynamic and the challenge is, here you have the entire institution, people as I described them, the process as I described it, very impressive, compelling, overwhelming. This man is who we say he is. He will lead us to bin Laden. And I show up. I have not worked this operation for months or years. I'm brought into it. So what credibility do I have? Well, zero. And the way you have to do an operation or achieve anything in the agency, but I would argue in any organization, probably on the ones that you're in, is you have to establish your own bona fides, an agency term, your own credibility. You come to be known as, okay, Carle knows what he's talking about. We need to listen to him, not just he's shown up and is making demands. So progressively, you start to establish your possession of the case. And that was over a period of weeks. And as I was able to do that, I could then start to at least think about asserting my own views. But to change the direction of the Titanic is really hard for one officer. So you progressively start to build the case. And that's what I started to try to do. But you can't just go in and say, it's all wrong, we need to change things now. You have to say, you know, he answered this question truthfully, and then they'll accept that. And then you say, he answered this question, and the way he answered this question indicates that our assessment is not correct. And then cumulatively you can say, look, there's this body of stuff that I have established that shows that I know what I'm talking about, and that has led us to the conclusion that differs from that of the institution. Ergo, we need to take the following different steps. That's how the only way you can do anything, and that's what I was working to do. So it was several weeks before I felt confident that I knew what I was talking about, as opposed to what my colleagues said, and then longer for me to try to affect some change in the paradigm of perceptions.
We've heard that you already knew when you left on this assignment that basically you were being given carte blanche to do whatever it took to torture this man, just to do whatever it takes to get the information. You say you don't believe in torture, that it doesn't elicit the kind of information that we might imagine it elicits. What's the basis of a good interrogation then?
Well, you know, I'm not an interrogator. Well, I became an interrogator, but I'm not. I'm a case officer, as we described.
Who says you are the interrogator?
Well, I became one. I shouldn't laugh about it. No, I did do that, but by my profession, I'm what I described, we talked about before. I'm an operations officer whose job is to spot a target, assess his vulnerability, develop that person and the relationship with him, recruit him to commit espionage, and then handle him. That's the job. It's a different job than being an interrogator. So as I got on the plane, and before I got on the plane, I thought, how am I going to do this? And I concluded, and I got it right, that the job called for the same skills and the same approach as those of a case officer, which means you establish a rapport. It's a human relation. It's a hideously distorted one. I have all the power of the CIA and the United States government at my command. You are helpless and in chains. You've disappeared from the face of the earth forever, unless I decide otherwise. This is not a normal relation. Nonetheless, it's a human one, and you will look me in the eye. And I said to Captus, I said, you won't, if you're smart, and you are, you will not believe a word I say. You shouldn't. I wouldn't. But you also know, you will come to know by talking to me and listening to me that I am a man of integrity, and what I tell you will be true. And you will also assess that the only hope you have is me. And that also was true. I did tell him the truth, and I was manipulative too. That's the job, but it's a human relation. It's me learning what makes you afraid. What are your hopes? What do I think you know? What quirks do you have? And then based on that, even grudgingly on your part, winning your trust, engaging, and even if I don't, engaging in some dialogue. And any dialogue is useful and provides information. That's how you do it. That's what I concluded, and I found to my eternal satisfaction that the conclusions I reached and the approach that I developed, had to figure out myself on the fly, are those of the FBI's trained professional interrogators. That's how you do it. It's a human dynamic. There's none of this cockamamie malarkey and junk and hideous, can't even find the right adjectives, terrible measures that amount to torture that in fact are just projections of power and humiliation and don't convince someone to provide information. That's not how to do it.
Did you like him?
I came to like him, yeah. I think in normal circumstances, he and I come from totally different worlds. He's not educated, he's a street smart man, he comes from a world where all of the cultural reference points are alien and vice versa. So I don't think we would be naturally friends who would watch a hockey game or take our kids to the park together. But that's not an insult or derogatory at all. We're just from different worlds. But I found him to be, on the whole, an honorable man and a man of some principle and moral strength. He had character, actually. And I admired it.
He was tortured, wasn't he? I mean, he was rendered a second time to Afghanistan, yes. And he was tortured.
Well, the one-word answer is yes.
Even though you were advising your colleagues in Langley, Virginia, that he is not who you think he is.
Yeah, well, yes, that's correct. The headquarters, it's one of the fascinating subtexts or stories in the book. To help me, they sent someone. The way things happen in the agency is you'll have formal cables that say headquarters sends to Steve orders to do X, Y, and Z, and that's all true. But before that cable ever goes, you'll send someone informally on a trip, and that trip will be to deliver distilled water, who knows what, some pretext. And then you'll say, after you deliver the water, you say, hey, Steve, let's chat for a second. Headquarters is concerned that things aren't going as we thought, so we wonder what you would think about sending him to the most severe interrogation facility. This is what happened. And I said, I oppose that. There's no reason to do it at all. And they say, okay, thanks. It's clear to me what's going to happen then. And then 3 days later, the telegram comes, dear Steve, to help you in your fine work, we've decided to provide you the extra tool of sending him to the enhanced interrogation facility. That's how it happened. And I argued against it, but of course was overruled. Now, by the definitions of the Geneva Convention, what happened there does constitute torture.
Twofold question. Did you leave the CIA because of how widespread the practice of torture was? And secondly, how did 9/11, in your opinion, change America?
Yeah, two good questions. I did not leave because of my involvement in the operation. This was a 3-month phase operation in a 23-year career. So it was the intense one, but it's 3 months. And this consumed all my life for that period of time. Normally, an officer will handle a half dozen or 10 cases simultaneously. So in the scheme of a career and in the scheme of the agency, this is one thing among an infinite number almost. So although I was appalled by what happened, I did not resign because of that. I retired 4 years plus later. What has 9/11 done to America? That's one of the reasons I wrote the book. It's a profound reason why I wrote the book, because what we have done, I wrote the book to describe for everybody, but especially for my fellow citizens, what we have done to ourselves. What we did to this man was bad. Torture is a bad thing. Here's the arc of revelation for me, and it's a terrible one, and it's why I wrote the book, and it answers your question. At first I thought, holy smoke, CIA, American officials involved in torture, this is awful. Then I realized, whoa, we don't have the legal authorization in an acceptable way, by my lights, or anybody else's, frankly, except for the neoconservatives, to do this. So on top of it being really bad, I consider it illegal, because we have a whole host of laws and traditions that make this clear. But that's not the worst either, because I found that all of the checks and balances, all the efforts of countless honorable, honest men and women in the various institutions that are relevant in the U.S. national security establishment, all of the organs of government and the laws did not suffice to stop a half dozen or 10 men from usurping the executive power of the United States government so that our laws did not obtain. We were not a government of law. That makes torture pale when you think that my country is no longer the country I took an oath to preserve, protect, and serve. It's unbelievable. But even that's not the worst. The worst is the answer to your question. What has this done to us? And here I'm going to quote something I bring up all the time, but this I think distills what's happened. When you poll, these are responsible polls, institutions. You poll Americans who are 35 and above, and you ask them the following question. Should CIA officers, should American officials be allowed to torture to protect the nation? A strong majority of people 35 and above in the United States say, well, of course not. That's un-American. Absolutely not. The CIA and all of our national security establishment exist to protect us from things like that. You ask Americans 35 and below the same question, and their answer is, it's okay. Guys like Carle, the CIA, they have to do what they have to do. That is appalling. That is not America. That's not the culture that I grew up in. That's not the culture embodied in our laws, our institutions, our practices. And it became so. And it became so because thinking they were following leaders who were acting in their behalf to protect them, the executive branch was ordered to do things that broke the law and coarsened our national culture. And I wrote the book because the laws were there. People tried to uphold them. Even all of the strength of our institutions failed to stop this. So another law won't make it better. What will is to change the attitudes of the American public and officials so that they realize what we've done to ourselves and what we do not need to do and mustn't do. And the only way you can do that is by telling the truth, and that's what I've tried to do.
We're nearly out of time. I can't let this moment go without asking you about... There was a man who received a standing ovation in this very room a year ago, David Hicks, one of two Australians who were abducted and rendered and tortured. And David Hicks, Mamdouh Habib and David Hicks spent 5.5 years Guantanamo Bay. He was beaten while blindfolded and handcuffed. This is what he says, forced to take unidentified medication, sedated by injection without medication, struck while under sedation, deprived of sleep, witness to attack dogs being used against other prisoners, anally assaulted. Was this all, and kept in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. Now, your government assured our government that he had been treated in accordance with international law, and we accepted that. Is that a plausible explanation to you? Is it plausible that the Americans did not treat him like this?
Oh, well, the behavior, the treatment that you just summarized, not every one of those techniques did I observe, but many of them I did. And they were, and I've never been to Guantanamo. But the practices that you described are, at least a number of them, most of them I observed firsthand.
I think the question really more should be, should the Australian government have accepted your government's assurance?
My one-word answer is yes. Yeah, the Australian government and other governments are in a bind in that circumstance. Generally speaking, most of the time, the United States, with its close allies, with anybody, but certainly with its closest allies, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand, we work very closely. The relationship is intimate, it is open, it is honest. And so the Australians, I completely understand, would take at their word their American counterparts. That's not a willfully blind approach for an Australian to take. No, I think that they could, in good faith, have said, okay, we believe you. Sure.
And have you ever heard that the Australian Greens Party is a front for the CIA?
I happily can say I've never heard of it.
No. But would a gay doctor from Tasmania be a good cover?
That does sound like a good one, yeah.
Look, I think we're out of time. I'm sorry we haven't had questions, but would you please Is it 3:30? Please thank Glenn Carle.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.